After 35 years of grinding shifts, broken knuckles, and more late nights than I care to count, Diana and I thought we finally earned a little peace. We weren't after luxury or high society, we wanted something simpler. A place where the only noise came from birdsong, not traffic, where you could sit on a porch and watch the light slip down a mountain ridge without hearing a neighbor's leaf blower. So when we found the little cedar cabin tucked at the edge of whispering pines, it felt like life was finally paying us back. It wasn't big, but it was ours. Surrounded by tall pines and with a gravel driveway that wound like a lazy stream, the place looked like it had been waiting for us. Diana fell in love instantly. She pictured a vegetable garden near the shed, herbs in pots by the back steps, maybe even a hammock between the oaks. For me, it was the gate. Old and creaky, hanging crooked on its hinges, but when I saw it, I thought, this is the door to our peace. No time clocks, no bosses, no debt collectors, no nosy neighbors, just the click of that gate behind us each evening. We moved in on a cool April morning, hauling our boxes from the truck, laughing at how out of shape we were, sipping coffee from travel mugs as the sun rose. That first night, Diana and I sat on the porch steps eating sandwiches, listening to crickets. I told her, we made it. She squeezed my hand and whispered, finally. For the first time in decades, we let our shoulders drop. Of course, looking back now, I realize paradise rarely comes without snakes. It was only 3 days into our new life when she appeared. We didn't know her name then, we just called her Clipboard Lady. She marched down our driveway without so much as a hello, waving a thick binder like it was a badge of honor. Tall, sharp features, the kind of smile that never reached her eyes. She introduced herself as the president of the HOA. I remember Diana tilting her head and asking politely, the what? Clipboard Lady, who we'd later learn was Karen, though Lorraine was her legal name, smirked as if we were children. The Homeowners Association of Whispering Pines. All residents are required to comply with community guidelines. That includes landscaping, paint colors, exterior modifications, and yes, gates. I blinked. Ma'am, we bought this cabin outright. There wasn't any HOA paperwork in the deed. Oh, it's in the covenants, she shot back, tapping her binder. You'll need to submit a request before you touch anything. The gate, for instance, has to be community approved. Diana, ever patient, asked to see the paperwork. Karen refused, muttering something about new residents never reading the fine print. Then she spun on her heel and stomped off, binder clutched like a holy book. Diana and I just looked at each other and laughed. Some people need to feel important, we thought. It was probably nothing. But then came the notes. Slipped under our door, taped to the mailbox. Unauthorized modification. Violation, unapproved fencing. Even one that read, this gate must be restored to HOA standards immediately, fines will apply. At first it was almost funny. We didn't move out here to deal with suburban politics, and certainly not to take orders from a stranger with a clipboard. Diana said, if she wants a fight about a gate, she picked the wrong couple. So, that weekend, we replaced the gate. Nothing extravagant, just sturdy cedar boards with a fresh coat of stain, strong enough to keep out raccoons and nosy dogs. When it swung closed with a satisfying thud, Diana smiled. This is our line, she said. Our peace. I didn't know that a simple gate would set off the storm that followed. That night, headlights swept across our windows. A car idled at the end of the drive. I stepped onto the porch and saw Karen sitting there, phone pressed to her ear, binder open on the dashboard. She watched me like I'd stolen something. 2 hours later, just as Diana and I were turning in, we saw the red and blue flash through the pines. The deputies knocked hard enough to rattle the new hinges. Diana opened the door, calm as always, but when they asked her to step outside, my blood boiled. Karen stood behind them, arms folded, triumphant. That's her, she said. That's the woman who vandalized community property. In that moment, with the gate still smelling of fresh cedar and the mountain air so sharp in my lungs, I realized our so-called paradise was about to become a battlefield. And Karen, well, she had no idea who she was really dealing with. The flashing lights painted our cabin walls red and blue like some kind of crime scene. I'll never forget the way Diana stood there in the doorway, calm but unyielding, while I clenched my fists behind her. 2 deputies stood on the porch, hats tilted low, hands on their belts, trying to size us up. "Ma'am," one of them said, "we got a call about a disturbance. Something about unauthorized property modification." Diana blinked slowly, then gave a polite little smile. "You mean, the gate?" From behind the deputies, Karen's voice screeched through the night like nails on glass. "Yes. That gate belongs to the community. She trespassed and destroyed HOA property. I want her arrested." The deputies glanced at each other, clearly uncomfortable. One of them asked Diana, "Can you show us proof of ownership? Any documents?" That was when my wife turned into the iron wall I've always known her to be. Without a word, she disappeared inside and came back with a neat folder. She already put together the deed, the closing documents, and county records, because Diana prepares for everything. She handed it over with the same composure she'd use in a boardroom. The deputy leafed through the papers under his flashlight. Meanwhile, Karen stomped closer, binder in hand. "You're wasting time. I told you, this cabin falls under Whispering Pines HOA jurisdiction. I'm the president. Their little stunt is a violation of—" Diana cut her off, voice cool as stone. "Officer, please notice that nowhere in these documents does it mention an HOA. This property is private, purchased free and clear. Whoever this woman is, she has no authority here." The deputy cleared his throat. "Well, she's right. There's no HOA listed on this deed." Karen's face twisted like she'd swallowed vinegar. "What? No, that's not possible. I have the covenants right here." She shoved her binder forward. Pages of photocopied rules, stamped with something that looked official, but up close, it was sloppy, almost cartoonish. Wrong fonts, no legal signatures, nothing notarized. Diana tilted her head and asked, "Do you mind if I look?" She flipped through a few pages, her trained eye catching every inconsistency. Then, in front of the deputies, she smiled that smile of hers, the one that means someone's about to regret underestimating her. "Officers, these are forgeries. Poor ones, too." The taller deputy stepped back, suddenly wary. "Ma'am," he said to Karen, "do you have any actual legal paperwork to back this up?" Karen sputtered, face red. "Are you blind? This is official. I'm the president. Everyone in this community knows me." The shorter deputy gave her a flat look. Being known isn't the same as being right. That's when she saw it, Diana's professional ID card tucked in the folder, proof of her credentials in forensic accounting. The realization hit Karen like a brick. She hadn't picked on some clueless retiree. She had just challenged a woman who made a career out of tearing apart fraudulent books and exposing scams. Karen froze. Her mouth opened, then snapped shut. For the first time since she stormed onto our property, she didn't have a single thing to say. The deputies handed Diana her folder back and told us we were in the clear. Then, turning to Karen, one of them said, "Ma'am, if you don't have real documentation, we can't enforce anything here. You might want to step off their property." She went pale but refused to budge. "This isn't over," she hissed, clutching her binder like a lifeline. "You'll regret this." The patrol car finally rolled down our driveway, Karen tailing close behind in her SUV. I stood by the new gate with my arm around Diana, watching the taillights vanish into the trees. The night was quiet again, but it wasn't the same kind of quiet as before. Because here's the thing about bullies, when they lose face in front of others, they don't go home to lick their wounds. They come back sharper, nastier, desperate to prove they still have power. Diana brushed sawdust from the cedar boards of our gate, the faintest smile tugging at her lips. "Well," she said softly, "now we know what we're dealing with." I nodded, jaw tight. And she has no idea who she just picked a fight with. That was the moment I knew this wasn't going to be a simple misunderstanding. This was war. The morning after the deputies left, I half expected Karen to slink back into whatever hole she crawled out of. Most people, after embarrassing themselves in front of law enforcement, would take a hint. But not her. Bullies like Karen don't retreat, they regroup. It started small. A folded piece of paper taped to our mailbox, notice of violation, unauthorized gate installation. Daily fines, $50. No signature, no letterhead, just block letters hammered out on an old printer. Diana read it, shook her head, and tossed it straight into the recycling. By the next week, there were 3 more. Unapproved exterior paint. Non-compliant landscaping. Unauthorized driveway gravel. She was reaching so far that I half expected the next note to accuse us of illegal bird feeding. But the real games began after dark. One night, we woke to the sound of glass clinking. I stepped onto the porch with a flashlight, only to find 2 garbage bags ripped open across our front steps, coffee grounds and old banana peels scattered like confetti. The smell hit like a punch. A few feet away, a car engine coughed to life and sped off into the pines. Diana didn't flinch. She just pulled out her phone and snapped pictures. Evidence, she muttered. The next night, it was eggs, 3 of them, splattered across the side of the cabin. I wanted to storm down the road and bang on Karen's door right then. But Diana stopped me with a hand on my arm. Her voice was low, steady. She wants you to react. Don't give her what she wants. We'll handle this smarter. And so we did. Diana set up a little motion-activated camera above the porch. Nothing fancy, but clear enough to catch faces. She logged every violation notice with dates and times, even noting the handwriting quirks. Within a week, we had a small folder of evidence, and Diana's eyes glittered with the kind of quiet determination that always meant trouble for someone else. But Karen wasn't finished. She started recruiting. 2 neighbors, people we hadn't even met yet, suddenly began glaring at us whenever we drove by. One, a barrel-chested guy named Jim, parked his truck half across our driveway one evening. When I asked him to move it, he leaned out the window and smirked. HOA business, he said, as if that explained everything. Another was a younger man, barely 30, who Diana later learned was named Tyler. He looked uncomfortable even as he stuck official HOA notice flyers on our mailbox. His hands shook, his eyes darting. It was clear he wasn't in it because he wanted to be, he was in it because Karen had gotten her hooks in him somehow. And then came the noise. Every night around midnight, a car would idle at the edge of our driveway. Headlights off, engine rumbling. Sometimes for minutes, sometimes for hours. I'd sit by the window with a baseball bat across my knees, fighting the urge to storm out. But each time, Diana reminded me, patience. The more rope we give her, the more she'll hang herself. I didn't know then just how right she was. Still, the tension was suffocating. Whispering Pines wasn't whispering anymore, it was hissing. Every walk to the mailbox felt like being watched through blinds. Every creak in the woods after dark made my heart pound. The paradise we bought was turning into a cage, and Karen was rattling the bars just to hear the sound. But here's the thing about Diana, she doesn't scare. While I paced and clenched my fists, she worked quietly at her desk, compiling documents, cross-referencing county records, even tracing signatures on the fake HOA notices. She was building a case, brick by brick, while Karen thought she was just intimidating the new folks. One evening, Diana looked up from her desk with that sharp little smile that always makes me nervous. "She's sloppy," she said. "Very sloppy. Give her time, and she'll hand us everything we need." I frowned. "And until then?" Diana leaned back, lacing her fingers. "Until then, we endure. Because when the hammer finally drops, it's going to be loud enough for the whole county to hear." That was the first time I realized Diana wasn't just defending our cabin. She was planning a counterattack. And Karen, in her arrogance, was walking straight into it. By the 3rd week, it was clear Karen had no intention of letting up. Every day brought some new stunt, another bogus notice, another car idling by our driveway, another set of garbage bags mysteriously dumped near our porch. But on a damp Tuesday morning, she finally crossed the line. We woke up to find a bright yellow envelope stuck to our cabin door with duct tape. In bold letters, it read, "Final warning, eviction notice." Inside was a letter, poorly formatted, riddled with typos, claiming we had 30 days to vacate Whispering Pines for repeated violations of HOA covenants. I could practically see the steam rising from my ears as I read it. Eviction? She thinks she owns this place now? Diana, though, was calm. She slipped the paper into a plastic sleeve like a piece of evidence from a crime scene. Forgery, she said flatly. And this time she's escalated into criminal territory. That evening, we spotted Karen herself strutting down our driveway, binder clutched against her chest like a shield. She didn't knock. She didn't ask permission. She barged right through the new cedar gate and onto our porch, jabbing her finger at me. "You've ignored every notice," she snapped. "You think you're above the rules, but this community has standards. That gate is coming down, and if you don't comply, I'll have the sheriff evict you myself." I stepped forward, but Diana touched my arm lightly, a silent reminder to let her handle it. My wife squared her shoulders, her voice low and steady. "Karen, you've already embarrassed yourself in front of the deputies once. If you'd like to try again, by all means, call them. But next time, they won't be asking us for documents. They'll be asking you." Karen's face twitched, just for a second. Then she laughed, a high, brittle sound that made the hairs on my neck stand up. "Oh, sweetheart," she sneered, "you have no idea who you're dealing with." That's when Diana leaned in slightly and said, almost whispering, "Neither do you." Karen froze. Just for a heartbeat. Her eyes flicked to the folder Diana carried, the edge of an official-looking document peeking out. And for that brief moment, I saw it, the crack in her armor. But then she doubled down. "This isn't over," she hissed, retreating down the porch steps. "You'll regret crossing me." Her SUV roared away, spitting gravel across our driveway. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. "She's insane," I muttered. "She's actually trying to evict us." Diana tucked the fake notice back into her evidence folder. "Good," she said softly. "The more outrageous she gets, the easier she'll be to expose." Still, the harassment ramped up. That night, someone spray-painted the words "rule breakers" across our mailbox. The following day, Jim, the barrel-chested neighbor, strolled by and muttered, "Should have followed the rules, old man," before laughing his way back down the road. But not everyone was laughing. That same week, a woman named Brenda knocked on our door. She lived 2 cabins over and spoke in a hushed voice, glancing over her shoulder as she explained. I can't take her anymore. She's been terrorizing this place for years. Fines, threats, rules she makes up out of nowhere. Half of us pay her just to get her off our backs." Diana invited her in, offered tea, and listened carefully. By the time Brenda left, I could see it in Diana's eyes, pieces of a bigger puzzle were coming together. Karen wasn't just bullying us. She was running a full-blown racket. And if Brenda was willing to talk, there had to be others. That night, Diana looked at me across the kitchen table, her evidence folder spread open between us. "She thinks this is about a gate," she said. "But what she doesn't know is that she's already lost. We just have to give her enough rope." I frowned. "So what's the plan?" Diana's smile was sharp as a knife. "We stop playing defense. It's time to build a case she can't escape from." I sat back, staring at the folder, the fake notices, the pictures of trash garbage, the spray-painted mailbox. For the first time since this nightmare began, I realized something: Karen wasn't the hunter anymore. We were. The night Brenda came forward changed everything. Up until then, it felt like Diana and I were standing alone against a storm. But hearing that quiet knock, listening to her voice tremble as she confessed years of being bullied. It cracked the illusion Karen had built. She thrived on making everyone think she was untouchable. Now, we had proof she wasn't. Diana wasted no time. The very next morning, she pulled out a legal pad and started charting everything. Dates, names, patterns. Each phony violation notice got its own line. Each late-night harassment incident was logged with photos. Each conversation with neighbors was recorded in neat handwriting. Documentation wins battles, she told me, sipping her coffee like she was preparing for trial. The law doesn't care about stories, it cares about evidence. By the end of that week, Brenda wasn't the only one talking. A retired couple down the lane admitted they'd been paying Karen HOA dues for 5 years, cash only, always in envelopes. A single mom confessed she'd been threatened with eviction after she refused to repaint her cabin approved beige. Even Tyler, the nervous young man who'd been posting notices on our mailbox, stopped Diana one afternoon. "I'm sorry," he muttered, barely looking up. "She made me do it. Said if I didn't, she'd report me to the county for unpermitted construction. I just built a shed, you know? I couldn't risk it." Diana put a gentle hand on his shoulder. "You're not the enemy, Tyler. You're just another victim." That night, I noticed something in Diana's eyes I hadn't seen since her corporate days: focus. Pure, unrelenting focus. She sat at the dining table with her laptop glowing in the dark, county records pulled up on the screen. Deed histories, zoning permits, tax rolls, she dug through them like a surgeon cutting to the bone. "Look at this," she said, spinning the laptop toward me. "Karen filed something called a neighborhood covenant with the clerk's office. But it's not a legal HOA. It's just a set of rules she typed up and slapped a fake seal on. She's been passing it off as law." I blinked at the screen. "So this whole thing, the fines, the dues, the threats, it's all a scam?" "Exactly," Diana said, her voice razor sharp. "And she's gotten away with it because no one questioned her authority. Until now." The more she uncovered, the worse it got. Thousands of dollars in dues collected over the years. Threatening letters filled with legal jargon she clearly pulled off the internet. Even one neighbor who claimed Karen had forged his signature on a consent form. Meanwhile, Karen must have sensed the walls closing in, because her behavior grew more erratic. Some nights, she'd march down the street shouting about rule breakers destroying the community. Other times, she'd post new ordinances on the bulletin board near the mailboxes, ridiculous things like no wind chimes permitted or garden gnomes must be pre-approved. But every wild move she made, Diana captured. Screenshots. Photos. Copies. Witness statements. Piece by piece, she was building a fortress of evidence. One evening, as I sat beside her at the table, I asked, "So what happens when we finally show this to the county?" Diana leaned back, her smile cool and confident. "Then the mask comes off. And when it does, she won't just lose her little empire, she'll be facing fraud charges." Her certainty was contagious. For the first time in weeks, I slept soundly. But even as Diana plotted our counterstrike, Karen wasn't about to go quietly. She still had her muscle, Jim, the barrel-chested neighbor. Late one night, headlights lit up our driveway again. I heard heavy boots crunching gravel, then the unmistakable hiss of spray paint. By the time I made it to the porch, Jim was halfway through scrawling "Pay your dues" across our gate. I shouted, and he bolted. But the camera Diana had mounted on the porch caught everything, clear as day. His face, the spray can, the vandalism in progress. Diana reviewed the footage, her eyes gleaming. Perfect. Another nail in her coffin. I looked at my wife, surrounded by binders, photos, and documents spread like a battlefield map. She wasn't just defending our cabin anymore, she was dismantling Karen's empire piece by piece. And I realized something then: Karen thought she was fighting a couple of retirees. What she didn't know was that she'd picked a fight with the wrong woman. Diana wasn't just playing defense. She was preparing to deliver the final blow. The day of the county board hearing felt like the calm before a storm. For weeks, Diana had been quietly gathering evidence, organizing files, and rallying neighbors who were tired of Karen's tyranny. And now, all that preparation was about to collide with Karen's arrogance in one very public arena. We arrived early. The county chambers were a modest building, beige walls, humming fluorescent lights, the faint smell of old paper. A dozen folding chairs lined the back wall, and already half were filled with our neighbors. Brenda was there, clutching a manila folder to her chest. Tyler sat in the corner, staring nervously at his shoes. Even the retired couple who had been paying Karen in cash showed up, whispering to each other anxiously. And then, of course, Karen arrived. She swept in like she owned the place, clipboard under her arm, lips pursed, a smug little smile plastered across her face. Jim lumbered behind her like a bodyguard. Karen scanned the room, her eyes landing on us. She smirked. "Glad you came. Saves me the trouble of having the sheriff drag you here." Diana didn't even blink. "This won't take long," she said softly. The hearing began. A county official cleared his throat and asked Karen to present her complaint. She wasted no time, launching into a tirade about non-compliant property modifications and community bylaws. Her voice dripped with self-importance as she waved a stack of papers in the air. "These people," she said, pointing dramatically at us, "have violated nearly every regulation this neighborhood stands for. Unauthorized gate, unapproved paint colors, disruptive behavior. They're a threat to Whispering Pines, and I demand they be evicted immediately." The official frowned, flipping through her papers. "Mrs. Harper," he said carefully, "I see here a document labeled Neighborhood Covenant. But this isn't an official county record. Where exactly did this come from?" Karen's smile wavered, but only slightly. "It's a binding covenant. I filed it myself years ago. Everyone abides by it." "Not everyone," Diana interjected, standing gracefully. She held up a binder thick with documents. "And certainly not legally." The room quieted. Every head turned toward my wife. Diana's voice was steady, precise. She began laying out her case piece by piece, photos of vandalism, copies of fake eviction notices, testimonies from neighbors. She pulled up county tax records showing that no legitimate HOA existed in Whispering Pines. She displayed screenshots of Karen's ridiculous ordinances, complete with timestamps proving they were fabricated. Karen Harper, Diana concluded, has been impersonating an HOA authority for years, extorting money from residents, forging documents, and threatening homeowners with eviction she had no power to enforce. Gasps rippled through the room. Brenda nodded along, tears in her eyes. The retired couple whispered, "That's exactly what she did to us." Karen's face turned crimson. She leapt to her feet, slamming her clipboard on the table. "Lies! All lies! You people are just jealous because I care about standards. This woman is manipulating you, she's dangerous." But Diana wasn't finished. With deliberate calm, she reached into her folder and pulled out a USB stick. "This," she said, "is footage of your associate vandalizing our property. It was recorded 2 nights ago." The county official plugged it into the projector. And there, blown up on the screen, was Jim, caught red-handed spray painting our gate. His face pale and unmistakable. The words "pay your dues" glowing under the porch light. The room erupted. Murmurs, whispers, angry shouts. Jim slumped in his chair, defeated. Karen, on the other hand, stood frozen. Her mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. For the first time, she looked small. Cornered. Exposed. The official banged his gavel for order. "Mrs. Harper, what we have here appears to be a clear case of fraud and harassment. I will be forwarding this evidence to the district attorney's office. Effective immediately, you are prohibited from representing yourself as any form of association authority." It was over. Karen stumbled backward, her face drained of color. She grabbed her clipboard as if it could shield her from the glares of her neighbors. But no one stood with her now. Not even Jim. As we left the chamber, Brenda touched Diana's arm. "You saved us," she whispered. "All of us." Diana simply smiled. Bullies only win when people stay silent. But as we stepped into the cool afternoon air, I couldn't help thinking, Karen wasn't the type to go down quietly. And though her empire had crumbled, I had a feeling she wasn't finished with us yet. The county board ruling should have been the end of it. Karen's fake HOA was dismantled, her lies laid bare, and her neighbors had finally turned against her. For the first time since we moved into Whispering Pines, the air felt lighter. People waved at us on walks. Brenda brought over fresh bread. Even Tyler stopped by with a nervous smile, thanking Diana for standing up when no one else could. But Karen wasn't the type to bow out gracefully. 2 nights after the hearing, we woke to the acrid smell of smoke. My heart lurched as I bolted upright. Through the bedroom window, I saw the flicker of orange against the trees, our trash bin, fully engulfed in flames. I grabbed the fire extinguisher while Diana dialed 911. It took minutes to put it out, though it felt like hours. Luckily, the flames hadn't spread beyond the bin, but the message was clear: Karen wasn't finished. The deputies arrived quickly. One of them, the same officer who'd responded to Karen's first 911 stunt weeks ago, shook his head as he took in the scorched plastic. "She's escalating," he muttered. "Good news is, the DA already has her on fraud. With this, we'll add arson and harassment." By morning, patrol cars sat parked outside Karen's house. She was let out in handcuffs, screaming about conspiracies, swearing she'd sue the entire county. Her words rang hollow. For the first time, the neighborhood wasn't afraid of her. They were watching from their porches, some even applauding as the cruiser pulled away. I thought that would be the last we saw of her. But life has a way of leaving scars, even after the fight is over. Over the following weeks, whispers spread of investigators finding tens of thousands in unreported HOA dues stashed away in Karen's accounts. Jim struck a deal, providing testimony in exchange for leniency. The community learned that Karen had been running her scam for nearly a decade, preying on fear and silence. Without her grip, Whispering Pines began to change. Neighbors who had once kept their heads down started planting gardens, repainting cabins, and gathering for barbecues without worrying about Karen's clipboard appearing. Brenda organized a potluck on the very patch of green Karen had once declared restricted common area. And for us, for Diana and me, the cabin finally became what we dreamed it would be. A place of peace. A place where mornings meant coffee on the porch, not tense standoffs with a bully. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the pines, Diana sat beside me, a gentle smile on her face. "Do you ever regret it?" I asked. "Taking her on? It would have been easier to just ignore her." She shook her head. "Ignoring people like Karen is how they win. Someone had to stand up. We just happened to be the ones who could." I thought back to Karen's face in the county chamber, the moment the mask slipped, the instant she realized who she was really up against. Not just 2 cabin owners, but people unwilling to be bullied. That moment, more than her arrest, was her true defeat. Weeks later, I received a letter in the mail. It wasn't from Karen, but from the district attorney's office. A formal notice: Karen Harper had pled guilty to multiple counts of fraud and harassment. She would serve time, pay restitution, and was barred from holding any community position in the future. I folded the letter, set it on the table, and looked out at the new cedar gate Diana had built. Strong, sturdy, unmovable, just like her. Karen had tried everything: threats, lies, even fire. But in the end, she'd only exposed herself. And the neighborhood she once ruled with fear now stood united in her absence. That night, as the crickets sang and the wind whispered through the pines, Diana rested her head on my shoulder. For the first time since moving here, it truly felt like home. And I realized something simple but powerful: Karen hadn't just lost her scam. She'd lost her power. And that was the one thing she could never get back.